Welcome to my channel, The Good Book Tales. In today's video, we begin a journey that starts on a quiet Mediterranean island but echoes through the entire story of early Christianity. Picture the island of Cyprus, surrounded by deep blue waters, known for its beauty, trade, and ancient gods. It feels peaceful, almost untouched. But beneath this calm surface, something world-changing is about to unfold. Long before cathedrals and creeds, before Christianity spread across empires, Cyprus became one of the first testing grounds of faith, courage, and spiritual confrontation. And what happened here would shape the future of the Christian mission forever. Cyprus in the Bible is mentioned only briefly, yet its role is far greater than it seems. This island was not chosen by accident. It stood at the crossroads of cultures, beliefs, and power. Merchants, soldiers, and philosophers passed through its ports daily. Pagan temples stood tall, Roman authority was firm, and ancient traditions ruled the hearts of the people. Into this world stepped a small group of believers carrying a message that challenged everything Cyprus thought it knew about truth and power. They had no armies, no wealth, and no guarantees of safety, only faith and a calling. Among them was Barnabas, a native son of Cyprus, returning home not as he once was, but transformed. Alongside him traveled Saul of Tarsus, later known as Paul, a man with a dramatic past and an uncertain future. Their mission was simple in words but dangerous in reality, to spread the message of Jesus Christ. Early Christian missions were never easy, but Cyprus would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. From crowded synagogues to powerful Roman officials, every step forward came with resistance, doubt, and risk. As Christianity first arrived on the island, it didn't come quietly. It confronted long-held beliefs, challenged spiritual authorities, and stirred unrest. The Bible records moments of intense spiritual conflict, moments where faith met opposition head-on. This was not just a journey across land and sea, but a battle for hearts, minds, and souls. And Cyprus became the stage where the message of Christ faced its first major encounter with Roman power. But not everyone welcomed this message. Behind palace walls and in shadowed corners, forces worked to stop the spread of this new faith. A Roman proconsul watched closely. A mysterious figure with influence and hidden motives stood in the way. What would happen when truth confronted deception? Would the mission survive, or would it end before it truly began? As we step deeper into the story of Cyprus in the Bible and the early Christian missions, the stakes grow higher. Faith will be tested, power will be challenged, and one dramatic moment will change the course of history on this island forever. And just when it seems the mission might fail, an unexpected confrontation will decide everything, but that moment is still ahead. As Barnabas and Paul moved across Cyprus, the island revealed itself as more than a beautiful backdrop. This was a land shaped by centuries of worship, power, and fear of the unknown. The people of Cyprus were deeply spiritual, but their faith was divided among many gods, rituals, and traditions passed down through generations. Temples filled the air with incense, and travelers spoke of divine favors and curses in the same breath. For early Christian missionaries, this environment was both an opportunity and a danger. Every word they spoke challenged beliefs that were deeply rooted in daily life. Barnabas felt the weight of this journey more than anyone. Cyprus was his home, and he understood its people, their hopes, and their resistance to change. Returning as a follower of Christ placed him in a difficult position. He was no longer just a son of the island, he was now a messenger of a faith many would see as a threat. Paul, on the other hand, brought a sharp mind and a burning sense of purpose. His past as a persecutor of Christians still followed him like a shadow, shaping the way others looked at him and the way he looked at himself. As they traveled from city to city, word of their presence spread quickly. Some listened with curiosity, drawn by the message of forgiveness and new life. Others watched in silence, uneasy about how this growing movement might disturb the balance of power. Roman rule kept the island under control, but Rome allowed local religions to thrive, as long as order was maintained. The spread of Christianity raised quiet concerns among leaders who feared unrest and loss of influence. Behind the scenes, figures of authority began to take notice. A Roman official, educated and powerful, showed interest in these teachers from the East. But he was not alone. Close to him was a man skilled in persuasion and secrets, someone who understood how belief could be used to control. His presence added a layer of tension to the mission, as truth and deception slowly moved toward a collision. Each step forward seemed to draw unseen resistance. Conversations ended abruptly. Doors closed without explanation. It became clear that this early Christian mission in Cyprus was stirring more than curiosity, it was awakening opposition. And as Paul prepared to speak before power itself, the question remained unanswered: would the message of Christ find a place here, or would it be silenced before it could take root? As the message of Christianity continued to spread across Cyprus, the tension became harder to ignore. Paul and Barnabas were no longer seen as curious travelers sharing new ideas. To some, they were disruptors, challenging long-held beliefs and unsettling a fragile peace. In public spaces, whispers followed them. In private gatherings, their words were debated with both hope and fear. The early Christian mission was beginning to divide opinion, and the island felt like it was holding its breath. The Roman proconsul, a man shaped by politics and reason, listened from a distance at first. He was known for his intelligence and caution, someone who valued order above all else. Reports reached him describing teachings that spoke of one God, unseen yet powerful, offering salvation without rituals or sacrifices. This idea intrigued him, but it also raised concern. Rome tolerated many religions, but a faith that demanded loyalty above all others could shift the balance of authority. Standing close to this seat of power was the magician, a man whose influence rested on mystery and control. He had built his position by offering answers where others found uncertainty. The arrival of Paul and Barnabas threatened more than his status, it challenged the source of his power. Every time the message of Christ spread, his grip weakened. From his perspective, this new faith was not just wrong, it was dangerous. Meanwhile, Barnabas wrestled with an inner conflict. He saw familiar faces in the crowds, people he grew up with, now watching him with doubt. Paul felt the pressure differently. He sensed that this moment in Cyprus was larger than the island itself. What happened here could shape the future of Christianity spread beyond Jewish communities and into the Roman world. As opposing forces slowly moved closer, the atmosphere grew heavy with expectation. Faith, power, and fear were now intertwined. And with an audience with Roman authority drawing near, the mission stood on the edge of a moment that could either open doors across the empire, or close them forever. The days leading up to the meeting felt heavy, as if the island itself sensed what was coming. Paul and Barnabas knew they were no longer speaking only to curious listeners in marketplaces or synagogues. Their message was moving toward the center of power in Cyprus. Every step brought them closer to a moment that could define the future of the early Christian mission. The air was thick with expectation, and even the simplest conversations carried an edge of uncertainty. Crowds gathered more often now, drawn by rumors of confrontation. Some hoped to hear words of truth, others came out of fear that something familiar was about to be taken from them. The message of Christianity had reached a turning point. It was no longer just about belief, it was about influence, authority, and control. Paul felt the weight of this shift deeply. He understood that standing before Roman leadership meant the message of Christ would be tested in a new way, one that could not be undone. Behind closed doors, the opposition grew more active. The magician moved quietly, speaking to those in power, planting seeds of doubt. He framed the Christian message as a threat to stability, a dangerous idea that could lead to unrest. His words were careful, calculated, and designed to protect his position. Each whisper tightened the tension, making the coming encounter feel unavoidable. Barnabas watched all of this with a heavy heart. This was his homeland, and he feared what might be lost if conflict erupted. Yet he also believed deeply in the truth he carried. The pull between loyalty to his people and obedience to his calling created a silent struggle within him. As the moment drew near, the lines were clearly drawn. Faith stood facing fear. Truth faced manipulation. And somewhere within the halls of Roman authority, a decision waited to be made. But no one yet knew how far the consequences of that decision would reach. Just when it seemed the path ahead was clear, an unexpected shift changed everything. News spread that the Roman proconsul had requested a private audience, not just out of curiosity, but with urgency. This was no longer a distant interest. The message of Christianity in Cyprus had reached a point where it demanded a direct response. For Paul and Barnabas, this invitation carried both promise and danger. A single conversation could open the door for the gospel to move beyond the island, or it could bring the mission to an abrupt end. But the request did not come without conditions. The magician, whose influence had quietly shaped the atmosphere around the proconsul, would also be present. His role was no longer hidden. He positioned himself as a guide, someone who claimed to protect the Roman official from deception. In reality, he feared exposure. The early Christian message threatened to unravel the carefully built illusions that kept him powerful. This twist raised the stakes dramatically. The encounter would not just be about belief, but about truth standing face to face with manipulation. As preparations were made, Paul sensed a growing urgency within himself. This moment felt different from anything he had faced before. Cyprus was no longer just a stop along the missionary journey, it had become a turning point in the spread of Christianity. He knew that whatever happened next would ripple far beyond the walls of the meeting place. Barnabas, standing beside him, felt the weight of history pressing in. This island that once knew him as a son now stood as a witness to his faith. Outside, the city buzzed with speculation. Some believed a great change was coming. Others feared chaos and loss. The tension between old beliefs and the new Christian faith had never been stronger. Roman authority, local tradition, and spiritual influence were all colliding at once. As the hour approached, silence fell. The meeting would begin soon, and every word spoken would matter. No one could yet see the outcome, but one thing was certain: the story of Cyprus in the Bible was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would test faith, courage, and truth like never before. The room fell silent as Paul and Barnabas were brought before the Roman proconsul. The weight of authority filled the space, but so did an unseen tension. The proconsul listened closely as the message of Christianity was spoken plainly, without force or fear. Paul did not argue for power or position. He spoke of truth, of light, and of a faith that asked for the heart, not control. Every word seemed to press against the walls built by fear and influence. The magician stepped forward, interrupting with confidence. He twisted the message, casting doubt and warning of danger. For a moment, it seemed his voice might carry the room. But something shifted. Paul fixed his gaze on him, not with anger, but with certainty. He spoke firmly, exposing the deception that had held power for so long. The confrontation was intense, not violent, but deeply unsettling. In that moment, the illusion of control began to break. What followed stunned everyone present. The magician's influence collapsed, and his authority faded instantly. The proconsul watched closely, shaken by what he had witnessed. This was not a display meant to impress, but a clear turning point. The conflict that had been building across Cyprus reached its peak in that quiet room. Truth had confronted manipulation, and it did not retreat. The Roman proconsul, known for reason and restraint, made his choice. He believed, not just in the words spoken, but in the power behind them. This moment marked one of the earliest recorded conversions of a Roman official to Christianity. The early Christian mission in Cyprus had crossed a line no one could undo. The gospel had reached into Roman authority itself, signaling that the message of Christ was no longer confined to the margins. But just as the tension seemed resolved, a final twist lingered. Paul and Barnabas did not stay to celebrate. Instead, they prepared to leave Cyprus almost immediately. The island that had tested them so deeply was only the beginning. Their mission was far from over. New lands, stronger opposition, and greater trials awaited them. Cyprus had opened the door, but what lay ahead would demand even more courage. The question now was not whether Christianity could survive, but how far it would go, and what it would cost those who carried it forward into an uncertain world. As Paul and Barnabas sailed away from Cyprus, the island slowly faded into the distance, but its impact remained powerful. What had happened there was more than a successful mission stop. Cyprus in the Bible became a symbol of transition, a place where early Christianity stepped confidently into the wider Roman world. The conversion of a Roman proconsul sent a quiet but clear message: the gospel of Christ was not limited by borders, culture, or status. It could reach anyone, anywhere. Barnabas carried with him a sense of peace. Returning to his homeland had not been easy, but it had been meaningful. He had seen familiar faces encounter new hope, and he knew that seeds of faith had been planted across the island. Though not everyone believed, the message of Christianity had been heard, and that alone marked a turning point. Cyprus would continue to echo with that message long after he was gone. For Paul, this journey confirmed something deeper. The events in Cyprus shaped his calling in a new way. He emerged not just as a messenger to Jewish communities, but as a leader in the mission to the Gentiles. The confidence he gained here would guide him through future trials, from hostile cities to prison walls. The early Christian missions were only beginning, and Cyprus stood as proof that the message could endure opposition and still move forward. The island itself returned to its rhythm of daily life, yet it was quietly changed. In homes, marketplaces, and places of worship, conversations continued. Some dismissed what they had heard, while others reflected deeply. Faith had entered the heart of Cyprus, and its influence would grow over time, often unseen, but never erased. The story of Cyprus in the Bible reminds us that history often turns on moments that seem small at first. A conversation, a choice, a confrontation with truth can shape generations. Early Christianity did not spread through force, but through courage, conviction, and faith in uncertain moments. And as the mission moved on, one truth remained clear: what began on this island would continue to change the world.